All right. Greetings. Welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. We are your hosts, Rashid and Rashid. And let's just get into it, man. Let's just go on and get into it with no beating around the bush. First, I do want to address one of the earlier viewers of the show. I think about a week. It was either last show or the show before last. I got an email, and you can send us emails at Hiram. That's HIRAM 1555 at yahoo.com. That's Hiram1555 at yahoo.com. You can do that. I got an email from one of the viewers, and they were asking me, and I think it was the show that you missed because you had something personal you had to take care of. They were asking me, do I smoke cigarettes? Because they saw some smoke bellowing across the screen or whatever, and they kept saying that, no, it is this right here. I want to show everybody it's this right here. When I'm doing the show, I have Knock Champa and Sage burning in the background, and it just so happened when the show started, I put it on the opposite side of the computer, and the fan was blowing it. So that's what you saw. I want to apologize for that, but that's what you saw. I like to clear the air with Sage and all that stuff like that. So let's go into something now. The big topics are Ukraine. But a lot of people missed out what truly happened at the United Nations General Assembly in the United Nations meeting a few days ago. Now, there has been a great tectonic shift in global politics, in economics, in trade, finance, whatever you want to say. There's a tectonic shift underway. Most people aren't aware of what was said, so I'm going to, because so many people are focused on Ukraine, which this ties into Ukraine, but Ukraine is not the only thing that's going on. And I believe that because it is in Europe and it affects Europeans and the so-called civilized world, man, that is racist as hell how they use that, the so-called civilized world or the rules-based order.
Basically, 10% of the world.
10% of the world, and they are the civilized or the international community. But anyway, I think it gets a lot of the news due to the fact of that. But there was a meeting at the United Nations a few days ago, and leaders and dignitaries of different countries had a chance to speak at the outset. And America came up with threats and innuendo, and it's amazing because she always puts whatever she's doing on other people. She always, if she's now mind you, she's talking about Russia and Ukraine. Yet in the media is always talking Russia and Ukraine. But yet they don't say a word about America in Libya, America in Syria, stealing oil tankers full of oil and stuff like that. They are not mentioning that. So what I'm saying is there's a global shift going on. And Africa being a key component of this shift. This was wiped out of the media because they don't give you a second thought. So when America spoke, you had multiple countries speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, but there was something that was major. That went on. The Ugandan commander of the land forces of his country followed up after the Malian president or the Malian government spoke highly of Russia, China, and the emergence of a multipolar world outside of hegemonic policies. The Ugandan land force commander says this, and I quote, "Attack on Russia is an attack on Africa." This is what he said. Now, this is very, very, very important. All right. This is what was said during, and I'm going to read the article to you. It's by Olga Borodikina. I'm butchering his name, but please forgive me for that. It says during Sergei Lavrov's tour in Africa in July, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni assured the Russian foreign minister that if Russia makes mistakes, then we will tell them. But when they have not made a mistake, we cannot be against them. Uganda's military would treat aggression against Russia as an aggression against the African continent. This is what the land forces said. But he also said that at the, not him, but his government also reiterated that at the UN Assembly. And what's important about that is that immediately after these reports hit the air, the Western media pushed this aside when Africa pledged their allegiance to a multipolar new order. And this was not just by Uganda, and this was multiple African countries. And they also they condemned the United States, Great Britain, and the Western world for their aggressive behavior and for pushing the world closer to the brink of war. None of this is being reported. Not a bit of this. And this is absolutely major when we're
I
talking
wonder
about
why.
the tectonic shift. Go ahead, go ahead.
I say, I wonder why. I wonder
Because
why it don't be reported. We've
well,
seen earlier that in Germany, thousands and thousands of people gathered to say turn on Nord Stream 2, but not a peep in the Western media.
right.
Not one word. Why?
We see the hypocrisy. We see the racism in it. We see the exceptionalism, and we can no longer call Western media journalism or Western writings journalism. We can call it innuendo, propaganda, and then the Western media being a propaganda, or as the Bible says, they are the Sadducees. Excuse me. They write no, they're the scripts. They write the propaganda that the government pushes out for the people to consume. Now, why did I talk about Uganda and why? Because within, now mind you, this was being reported yesterday and day before yesterday. So why did I bring Uganda to the forefront and then mention Nigeria or South Africa or what the other African states says? Because the majority of them openly state they are for uh, global inclusion and a multipolar world. But why did I focus on Uganda in this opening piece? It's because it wasn't a few hours later that there was an outbreak of Ebola virus in Uganda. And guess what? Uganda is ground zero of America's biolabs. Coincidence? Coincidence. I'm saying, is that a coincidence? There was a major outbreak of Ebola in Uganda hours after the Ugandan government said what they had to say, and the Ugandan military reiterated their political stance. What have you to say on this situation, Rashid?
Same thing with Iran. Iran joining the SCO. Then all of a sudden, some female dies, and then riots all over the place.
Yeah, yeah.
Same thing with Russia. Russia mobilizes, and then all of a sudden, tens of thousands of hundreds of millions of people leaving Russia. The Western media is a joke.
Yeah.
Rumor and innuendo. There's an article from the Consortium News, and the article is exposing covert Western information ops. On here is a Stanford Stanford University what I say, Stanford Information Program. They put it out, and they said that all around the world, America sponsors trouble in all other countries. Now, this is them saying about themselves that they come on and sponsor these what do you got, NGOs, right? And these
Yep.
internet trolls, or people that come out and bash the other country, but all of them come from America. He is a trouble. Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us he was a troublemaker, and it's backing it up. He is all around the world stirring up trouble. He just can't help himself. What did he say? If he see two people on the street corner talking, he got to know what y'all talking about. He can never stay out of everybody else's business.
And not he's got. He not only does he have to know, he has. They're talking about. So, again, why are we bringing these things up? We're bringing this up to the forefront, and we want to prove to you about the Western media. Now, I want to show you the tactics that they use. Now, they tried to overthrow some of the CSI states, which is the Commonwealth of Independent States, them former Soviet republics. They had color revolutions over there when they were leaning more towards Russia. All right. Now, every time you look around, there is a protest, and all of the protests have things in common, right? And notice this: the Western world did not once cover the massive French protests that shut down the French economy. They didn't. There were millions of farmers and stuff blocking highways. They didn't cover that. What about all the massive protests that took place across America? And they constantly are doing that. And the media goes on its everyday mission without reporting any of the stuff. You would think that no protests are going on because they relegate that as insignificant because they don't want you to believe that you have power or that you have collective unity and stuff like this. So they want to focus on something else, and they come up. You could tell that the empire is so desperate because of the lies. You know, sometimes back in the days when the empire would come up with lies, sometimes you could halfway believe it because it seemed or it even sounded that it could be
plausible.
Believable. Yeah, but nowadays, I mean, the lies are so big and so humongous and so out of proportion that you're saying, really? And I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to bring this to the forefront right here. Let me see if I can bring this on the screen right here. Give me 1 second, because they are getting out of just out of pocket with the lies.
It is so bad that you just got to shake your head and turn it off. I mean, Putin bad. Ayatollah bad. Anybody else Xi bad. Do you got anything? I mean, halfway decent to say about it. Everybody around the world is not bad, and 10% of the world is not good.
Yeah. Look at the headline on the screen. This is amazing. Putin has escaped to a secret palace in a forest amid anti-draft protests in Russian cities, report says. Now, what's and listen to me good. The reason I put this up here because I want you to see this is from what the West would call a credible paper or organization. This is from the Insider. So when these so-called credible news organizations are showing that they have lost touch with reality, this shows you how bad the empire is spiraling out of control and how desperate she has become. I just want, for those of you who are listening, just look at the headline. Putin has escaped to a secret palace in a forest amid anti-draft protests in Russian cities, reports say. They don't tell you where the report originates from. They don't tell you who is the author of the reports. All they just do is refer to a report.
And it's usually they get it from this source that they get quite a few of their sources from. His name is anonymous.
Yeah, it's their sources. What they do with everything, just like Joe Biden the other day when he said when he sent his national security advisor out to say that if Russia uses nuclear weapons in Ukraine, then we will do it. Remember, they played that same play under Obama in Syria, as Syria was winning the war. Syria, if you use chemical weapons, there will be a heavy price to pay. Now, Syria is winning the war, but yet America wants you to believe that they became so desperate in winning that they use chemical weapons. Now, here's the thing here. You have
Also,
not heard Russia response because Russia had already, my sources told me that the Russians had already talked to the US and their dignitaries and told them they better calm that rhetoric down because they're not playing. And that's why Putin in one of his speeches said, I'm not bluffing. He didn't mix words or anything. He said, if this continues, if we are threatened, we will use our weapons, and we have more modern weapons, some of them, than the Western, and we would not hesitate to use them to defend Russian interests and Russian national security. And he's not the rest of the world. They're not like America. They don't make all of these braggadocious threats and never live up to them. How in the hell can you hold Russia with the barrel of a gun through nuclear weapons, right? And Russia has
as if Russia
nuclear
cannot
weapons.
do the same thing to you.
Right. And they have more nuclear weapons than you. And they have a better military than you now. They have better weapons than you now. And what you see is a lot. What America is doing, she's trying to cower the nations because now she sees that she's on a decline. Russia is reemerging as a viable global power, and China is ascending into the position of the number one superpower. And Iran has reached the stage of great regional power. And America sees these things on her descent. She's seeing her enemies ascending, and it's causing turmoil and fear and consternation and just panic in the establishment because they are doing everything they can. They're taking whatever poop that they can get out of their bowels and fling it against the wall, hoping that it'll stick. It's unreal, the propaganda, and the people buy this propaganda. Go ahead, Rashid.
Andrei Taratov was saying that they put that a couple of people was going to the Finnish border with Russia, was back and forth, and this is normal traffic, and they put it on like everybody's leaving Russia. It's unwatchable. They then devolved into the level of their news media being unwatchable. No part of it is factual based. Nothing. Just lies and rumors. And of course, that anonymous sources tell them. That anonymous sources can tell them everything. And they even the New York Times had to admit that they got a lot. They supposed to be the standard of Western society news media, but they have the anonymous sources most of the times too nowadays.
Yeah, but I just want the people to just look at this far-fetched, this just out there. Man, you have to be doing mushrooms or some type of drugs to even believe this part right here. Putin has escaped. Escaped where? I mean, and what is he escaping from? When all reports are saying that there were a few protests, but they numbered less than 100. So
and
now you have a nation of 40 million people, and you scared of 400 or 100?
And the protest is started by the Western NGOs.
That's right.
The Americans are the one that told them to go out and spend, like over in Iran. The Americans, the Iranian news media reported that they know where that this trouble is coming from, and what's the Elon Musk, right? Yeah, all of a sudden, he gonna come in and be magnanimous and gonna come in and sit around and open up all of his internet tools to the Iranian people, showing that he was a part of the establishment all along. He just all of a sudden he just came out of nowhere and got billions.
Listen, I kept telling people this for years. When you see these nobodies like Zuckerberg, and you see these people just come out of nowhere and they become billionaires, and then they have these platforms and they have a control of a certain platform or a certain a media outlet or whatever, or social media thing. Those are intelligence people are connected to the intelligence agents, and the so-called independent or startup company was seeded with CIA drug money, and so it is with Elon Musk, as I was saying on one article. It is no coincidence that Elon Musk becomes this a 200, 300, 400 billion dollar person out of nowhere. All right. He starts Skylink. He says that that's an independent company that will be used to give internet to the world, right? And then immediately in the Ukraine war, he started feeding the Ukrainian government satellite real-time information so that they could target Russian civilians and kill Russian civilians, and they repeat the same thing in Syria. They're repeating the same thing with the protests in Iran. They used Starlink to organize the protests in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan too. And those operatives there were using the Starlink to communicate outside of the communications in those countries, so that they can preposition people and the people who was going to start the violence to preposition them, so when the thing went down, the color revolution could unfold. And this is Elon Musk to a T. So for those of you who look at Elon Musk and you look at the Facebook guy Zuckerberg, and you look at them as like people
Jeff
who
Bezos and all the rest
all
of
of
them.
them, all of them are operatives of the Western political class and the Western governments and the Western military industrial complex, or the MIC. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, you see the same thing as you were saying. What is going on is it looks like desperation.
Yeah.
Today, the British pound hit the skits and went back to the level it was in 1971. It looks like desperation. Something is coming that's making them freak out. The old tricks that they used to pull off won't continue the way they've been doing it. The old tricks are everybody see like we said before, the 3-card Molly with the shells. Everybody know the P is in his hand, not in the shell. So the nations are seeing him, and he's losing his mind.
Yeah, yeah. It's just absolutely amazing that more people are not processing this. They are buying the government lying on this stuff about, oh, Putin's bad. And what's crazy about this is America is involved in every conflict, every disagreement, every protest around the world. And at first she lies, and some of them say, I'm not involved. And then before you know it, she comes out and says, yes, we will help these people. But then if somebody reaches out to help protest here, that's a flagrant violation of American sovereignty. That's
and then she's ready to bomb you.
Yeah, yeah.
She's ready to bomb the other countries for doing what she doing up to them.
The hypocrisy of the West, especially America. And as I continue to tell people, and we continue to we say this over and over again, the reason America does that is because she actually believes that she is the exception to the rules. That exceptionalism, that is not, that's just not, yes, right. That's not just her talking. That is the belief, that the innate belief of the political class of America. They believe that the laws of cause and effect affects everybody but her. They believe that. They believe that they are God's, the God-given rulers.
What do they call
of this planet?
The rulers of the mass. Yes, they are the rulers of the masses. They believe that they can do what nobody else can, and the reason why I can do it is because God gave me the right to do it.
Yeah, I'm that exceptional city that sitteth upon the hill. Now you can bomb. Think about this. And Biden's speech was so condescending at the United Nations that a lot of the nations either looked away, turned their back, or walked out. We don't bomb people in the 21st century. We don't invade. Now he just, what was it, 2 weeks ago, sent a drone strike in Afghanistan. He is occupying part of Syria. He is refusing to even acknowledge the votes by the Iraqi parliament and the president signing the decree and the prime minister signing the decree twice for complete removal of U.S., British, and NATO troops out of the country. Now, that's not violation of territorial integrity or sovereignty. That's not an affront to international law. That's not a crime against humanity and a war crime. But what Russia is doing, egged on, provoked by the U.S. and the West, oh, that's the worst thing that could ever happen. Well, what about what is going on in Mali right now? Huh? Why isn't the Western world talking about what's going on in Mali right now? That's an African country. That's a northern African country, a former colony under France, and how France used to get all of its ores and all of its uranium and all of these precious things because they don't have much. They used to get it from Mali for nothing, slave wages, right? Why is nobody talking about what's going on in Mali? Why nobody covered the protests that broke out in Mali just yesterday and day before yesterday? They want American troops. They want British troops. They want Canadian troops. They want German troops. They want European and NATO troops out of Africa. The protests spread to other countries. Why is it only them focusing on Ukraine when there are major protests in Africa? This is because they disregard lives that are not European. This is because they do not think of you as a civilized people or civilized countries or civilized continent. This is because they believe that might equals right, and we don't care about your plight. We will do what we want, when we want, how we want, regardless to what you say. And when it's feasible and when it's conducive to our national security policies, then we'll start talking about democracy. But when it's against our national security policy, we ignore democracy, we ignore sovereignty, we ignore human rights, we ignore. Go ahead.
And then run around talk about I'm a Christian. Always at church on Sunday, hollering about, talking about the teachings of Jesus, who was the very opposite of what he claimed to be.
Yeah.
Jesus was we repeat, a man of peace, a humble man who said, sell give your wealth away and come and let's help the poor. Now, how many Western country people would do anything like that? And then run around hollering about all of the richest. We're the wealthiest country on the planet Earth, and we have this and we have that. And when you look at their wealth, they stole it from somebody else.
And not only that, the wealth is an illusion, because the wealth is based on paper currency with no backing, and they can assign a denomination to it any kind they want. But when the world pushes away from that, the wealth will disappear, just like the power that they believe that they have. Remember that the life's blood of the empire and the life's blood of the Western world is the dollar. People say, well, the euro, the British pound, well, all of that is tied to the dollar. And if the dollar goes, which it will, so goes American might. Because America cannot give the life's blood. She can't give the life's blood to the military industrial complex because she won't have any funding for that. And that means that her escapades around the globe will be rebuffed and pushed back. And that means that Britain will be rebuffed and pushed back. That means that the so-called global NATO powers will be rebuffed and pushed back. And then I want them to think about this, because they're arrogant at this time. When you think about the hell that you put on other people, because you have the military might or the economic prowess to do it, and you think that you can't see further down the wheel of time, so you think that you'll always be in this position. Well, we see that you're waking up and you don't like what you see, because you see that your position is steadily in decline. Now, when your currency falters and fails, and your economy stumbles and falls, and your military position is pushed to the side, what do you think will happen to you from those people who have long memories? The people that you pillaged, raped, occupied, bombed under fake pretenses, under the auspices of right to protect. What about that? What do you think will be your just desserts from a host of nations around the globe. Britain, you got to think about that. France, you got to think about that. America,
That's
you got
how
to think
they
about
build
that.
their wealth. That's how they built their wealth. Like you said, on Stevie and robbing and murdering other countries. What all of the kings and queens jewels in London come from Africa. Every last one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Without that, what do they have? If they can't get the oil from the Middle East, what do they have? Even they say that the what is it? The fertilizer that they use come from Russia. What do you have?
Some trees. They have trees, and they've been putting them to use.
And they ain't got a whole lot of those because they've been chopping them down.
See, we're giving you we're giving you the real spiel on what's going on in the world. We want you to understand, and we want you to see from a different perspective, because most mainstream media, well, all mainstream media will not cover the news like this, and most alternative media will not cover it like that, because in some way, shape, or form, they are invested in the system. They are invested in Western domination, and if the Western position collapses, then they too collapse, or their wealth, or their income, or their position, or their supporters collapse. And it is amazing that nobody is talking about these issues, about what transpired in Africa these last few days. I have yet, and you know what? I sat back. You see, I did a few articles, premium articles. I have yet to see a major alternative media outlet or so-called news organization report on the events that just took place in Africa. Some of them touch on something about Africa and keep moving, but their main focus is on Ukraine. Their main focus is on what's going on with across Europe. Now, yes, we're going to focus on Europe. We are.
Now that article you put, where Russia was hiding out. I mean, Putin was hiding out. Mm-hmm. What they gonna do this winter when nobody got any electricity or gas to heat their home? What are their leadership gonna do? Where are they gonna be hiding out? Because Putin ain't the one that the people gonna come for.
That's right. And what's amazing is the European Union followed America's line, hook, line, and sinker. They've been deindustrializing as we speak, and the people are rising up against the masses. There are protests all across Europe, Italy, France. I mean, everywhere. There are protests all across Europe because of the crazy financial policies and economic policies that are being put in place following America's lead. And then the people are also mad is because America talked Europe into doing this and said that we got you. We have enough oil and gas. We can sell it to you at a discount price. And now America has quadrupled her prices and saying that she could only cover certain amounts. You can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this
American. Typical American with his capitalism, right? A natural disaster happened, and the guy at the local quickie mart is charging $10,000 for a bottle of water. That's capitalism, right? Well, same thing. The problem that they started, now they're capitalizing on it, right? 10 times, we'll send it to you with 10 times. 10 or 20 or 30 times the price.
Yeah.
That is his nature. He can't help it. He have to mistreat people, rob and steal. That's the American way of doing business. Stir up trouble,
and Europeans,
and then come in there and then capitalize on it.
Yeah. And the Europeans say, "Hey, but you promised us this. We did this and this." And the Americans say, "Well, we thought we'd be able to, but we're not going to be able to fulfill that promise. When we told you we could send you X amount of millions of barrels of oil a day, we can only do 200,000, and we can only do it every other day." This is how they're talking to them, and now Europe is like, "Uh-oh," and it's amazing that we're talking on
a big question mark on the top of their head.
Orban, you know Orban, the guy from Hungary, the leader of Hungary, Viktor
Yes.
Orban.
Yes.
He says, matter of fact, let me go to it right here. Uh, Viktor Orban, where is he at? They moved him. Viktor Orban. Let me see if I can find him real quick.
You
There
know
he is, right here. Listen to what he says right here. This is one member. He's the prime minister or the president of Hungary. He's the prime minister. He's the leader of Hungary. And this is what he says in bold letters. He says EU sanctions have backfired. It says Hungary should prepare for a prolonged conflict in Ukraine. The PM said sanctions imposed by the European Union on Russia over its military offensive in Ukraine have backfired, according to the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who pointed out that skyrocketing energy prices in Europe were the result of the restrictions. Speaking to Parliament on Monday, the Hungarian leader warned the people that people should prepare for a prolonged war in Ukraine. He also stated that the EU's response to the conflict was the reason governments across Europe have started falling. You hear that? Putin government isn't falling. Listen,
in Italy,
oh,
they
not just
brought
Italy,
in, huh?
Austria too. Austria too.
Brought in this not basically a Nazi sympathizing government into Italy.
Mm-hmm.
They, like you said, they're falling, but they not saying too much about, but not too much about that. Keep that quiet.
And listen, excuse me. He says because I want to reread this again so that not the whole thing, but this particular sentence because this is major. This is from a member of the EU. This is from a member state of the EU, from the head of that member state. He says, speaking to Parliament on Monday, the Hungarian leader warned that people should prepare for a prolonged war in Ukraine. He also stated that the EU's response to the conflict was the reason governments across Europe have started falling. So it wasn't Russia, it was the response by the EU that shot themselves in the leg, arm, foot, chest, and back. And it says, referring to Sunday's election in Italy, where right-wing, candidates were expected to take control of the government. We can safely say that as a result of the sanctions, European people have become poorer, while Russia has not fallen to its knees, said Orban, whose country, like many in the EU, currently faces surging inflation, plunging consumer confidence, and a possible recession. This weapon has backfired, and the sanctions Europe has shot itself, and the sanctions have backfired. With the sanctions, Europe has shot itself in the foot. Man, I'm telling you, he said, we are waiting for an answer. The entire Europe is waiting for an answer from Brussels on how long we will keep doing this. The pain, what Putin is doing, he's upping the pain down.
It's not only what they having are doing, freezing to death this winter. That's another thing too.
Yeah. You know, this is an unprecedented move for people going into the forest to cut down trees. But you remember when the Belarusian president made the joke about that a week ago about cutting down trees for his European partners. Remember, as they level sanctions against Belarus and Russia. You know, and now we see Europe in turmoil, economic turmoil. Now, this has everything to do with a tectonic global shift, okay, that is going on. A major political, geopolitical, and economic shift is underway. And the West, being the powers and authorities for the last few hundred years, one took the place of the other, but they all were junior partners at one time to the other one. And when one rose up, he didn't just push all his brethren aside, he kept them underneath him. That's why they say the NATO alliance, the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance. They're talking about organization. They're talking about Western and to put it blunt, they're talking about white countries. That's what they're talking about. Just to put it blunt, most people won't touch that because they don't want to be viewed as racist, but being right is not racist. When you tell the truth, sometimes you have to touch on issues that ruffle feathers. And anyone who has a brain knows that NATO, as Rashid said, is an exclusive club of white nations. It's an exclusive club.
The truth hurts the guilty. Remember that.
Right. And so this club put together, well, one time, but right before the U.S. ruled, it was Britain that ruled. And before that, you had France, you had Spain, you had Belgium, you had all of they took turns. But their main goal was to prevent non-white nations from ever becoming totally independent economically and politically and militarily, and for them to suppress any rise. And matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that in the United States stated doctrine to prevent any nation outside
the
of the
neocons,
West? Yes,
the neocons,
to prevent any nation
the
outside of the
Project for New American Century. Yeah,
and it says
that's what they come
to
up with.
prevent. Yes, that's right. To prevent any nation or combination of nations outside of Western domination to rise as a near peer or peer adversary. This is in their policies. I'm not talking about something that I made up. This is in the United States stated policy and the Western world stated policy. So when you get a understanding of that, then you see quite well why they look more at China as the greatest threat to imperial power and to the Western world. That's why they say even NATO is now formulating policy saying that they see China as the greatest threat. Now, China hasn't bombed, invaded, or walked through no nation without their permission in the last dozens of years. But it's been the NATO countries.
Same thing with Putin. Putin them stack up their conquests, military conquests against NATO, and it's like that. Putin, NATO way up here, Putin them down there. Same thing with Iran. Iran ain't attacked nobody in 300 years, right?
Right.
But how dare you? And he's bombing somebody every other week.
Yeah. And occupying their land. And then that's not an affront to freedom, justice, and equality. That's not an affront to international law, human rights, or a violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty of nations. But if somebody stands up to the plan that the U.S. pushes to surround them with military bases or to hold them at gunpoint to a nuclear strike, then that is an affront to international law, war crimes, crimes against humanity. Man, if they don't get out of here with that, man, I'll slap the whole lot of them. So, again, I want to also get to something. Someone kept asking me about, I got an email, and I see your comments. I'm going to respond to your comments in just a minute, okay? I somebody kept asking me about you said that you and Rashid had the clip of a guy saying that America's debt was $222 trillion and but you never played the debt and blah 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 blah. So I don't know if I have both clips, so I don't know where he says it, but I'm gonna play. Let's see. This is number I got the okay. I'm gonna play them. One is 6 minutes and one is 7 minutes. I'm going to play the first one and see if he says it on that. If he says it on the first one, there will be no need for me to play the second one, okay? But I remember that this took place years ago when this guy talked about America's debt. And remember, at this time, America's debt, her so-called GDP was $14 trillion. And now she says her GDP is 28 trillion. I'm like, how? I mean, anyone with common sense, how can your GDP double when you have more unemployment, more debt, more homelessness, more hunger, less trade, a declining dollar, and a declining position in the world? Common sense says that, and even science and math won't allow that to be.
What people do not understand is it's a dollar-based debt system. It's not precious metals. He ain't got no $220 quadrillion or whatever it is in precious metals. He got monopoly money. This is what people don't understand. American money, matter of fact, a monopoly money might be more valuable than American dollars because it's actually tangible something. America, if he say he gonna give you $200 million, he just go and punch it on the computer. Okay, you got $200 million. It's worth nothing. And when the other people around the world wake up to this and stop sending him all of his goods and stuff that he cannot pay for, he cannot give them anything of tangible assets in return, it's over.
So I want you to understand. I want you to listen to this. Please be patient and listen to this. I think I'm going to put the disclaimer up first. Let me put the disclaimer up first because we don't want no craziness from YouTube and the algorithm and stuff. So let me put the disclaimer up first. Then we'll come right back and say a word. Then we'll play the video. So pay close attention. So we're back. So we had the disclaimer up. Now I'm going to play part one. This is a professor. I believe this is the professor who's talking about the U.S. situation and how she hides her debt. Now, I'm going to remind you that this debt at the time and still to this day does not include the derivative markets, which are in the quadrillions. Okay, that's why the Bible tells you that in the day of America's downfall, no nation would be able to come to his aid. No nation. Why? Because even if all of them stacked their wealth and their money together, the debt situation would be so astronomical that it would just wipe away all of them of wealth. Okay? So just listen to this guy right here.
Lawrence Kotlikoff, economics professor at Boston University. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
It's great to be with you and great to be in Russia.
So you're the one who states that America is broke and is even in a worse state than Greece and Ireland. How so? What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, we economists look at all the bills the government has to pay, and in the U.S. case, we have enormous bills that have been kept off the books that are not official debts, but they're very real. For example, paying me my social security benefits, my old age pension, that's a real obligation. It's not part of official government debt, but it's, very important because there are 78 million baby boomers who are going to get these social security payments and, in addition, medical payments from the government. If you look at all those payments, they're about $3 trillion a year. So we have these huge bills. Nobody has thought about paying for them. And Congress and the presidents over the years have just focused on official debt and basically have not told the public about these big bills.
You said the amount of the fiscal gap in the United States is, in your estimation, $222 trillion. Is this right?
$222 trillion. If you take
this is like an astonishing number, which is like 3 times the world's GDP. This is more than what the world makes.
20 times higher than the official debt in the hands of the public, which is 11 trillion. So if you add all these spending obligations into the distant future and you compare them with all the taxes and you include in the spending all the interest payments and principal payments on the debt, on the official debt, you have 222 trillion in present value. Now this is 12% of GDP on an ongoing basis. In other words, we need to get 12% more of GDP either in tax increases or spending cuts in order to have the fiscal gap be zero. We're doing far too little too late. It's like operating on a person with cancer and you say, well, there's a big tumor here. We're just going to take a little bit out today and we'll come back in 5 years and we'll take out some more. But maybe in 5 years the patient is dead because the tumor got bigger. So this is why we are in worse shape than Greece. And Greece, it's about 10% of GDP they need on an ongoing basis. We need 12%. Italy, it's about 5%. Germany, it's about 5%. So when you look at it from this perspective, it's a whole different story than when you look just at the official debt, because these governments are making choices, word choices, about what to call official obligations and what to call unofficial.
So are they intentionally hiding the
They're
enormity
intentionally
of the
hiding
problem?
this. They've been spending, in our country, 6 decades running a massive Ponzi scheme, taking from young people, giving to old people, and then telling the young people, don't worry, you'll get yours when you're old. Promising pensions, promising health care benefits. And, you know, this is happening in all countries. Even Russia has a pension system, but it doesn't seem to be in as bad a shape as ours in terms of paying for its benefits in the future.
But I mean, this number, 222 trillion, I mean, what exactly is this, where is this money going? Who is spending it? I mean, certainly not the average American. What is it, like the 1% of the super rich, the military needs? Where's it going?
Where's all the spending?
Yeah.
Well, you have, again, you've got a lot of old people now. They're getting very high benefits, about $30,000 per person. It's scheduled to go up to about $40,000 when I retire, which will be about 15 years. So you can see that we're just very generous to the old people in our country.
What do you suggest? Like cut spending, raise taxes? That would be suicidal to any American president.
Well, we have to be adults. If we're running the country, we have to act like adults, because our main responsibility as adults is to make sure our kids have a good future. So we have to reduce the growth rate of the benefits to the elderly. And that requires cutting the growth, being much more careful about how much we spend on health care, because it's been the health care benefits have been growing at twice the growth rate of per capita GDP for 40 years. These are the government health care benefits for the elderly. So it can't continue, because it's going to kill the country. So we have a huge problem. It's being hidden. It's not being described and discussed, disclosed, and we're in very bad shape.
You just mentioned that you need to take care of the future generations. Clash of generations is the term you use to describe what future awaits for American children paying up the debts of their fathers. But the United States, when you look at it, it really has lived on debt ever since World War II, and increasingly so in the past 30 years. And they have somehow managed not to collapse, and they have no problem getting new debt. Why do you think that the new generation won't be able to manage it?
Well, over time, the official debt will become bigger and bigger as a share of GDP. And at some point, the Chinese and other people will stop lending us money. And our interest rates will go up dramatically. We'll have a bond market collapse. And at that point, the deficit will get even bigger. The official debt will accumulate even more rapidly. And our government is also printing a lot of money to pay for these bills. So inflation can also take off very quickly. So I see big problems, and they may not be in 30 years, they may be in 5 years or 2 years, that the Chinese and other people start to understand how bad the situation is. And then we'll be in the situation of Greece, where people won't lend us money.
So you hear that. That's where this professor, he was giving you the low. This was nearly a decade or more ago, okay? As he was talking about the $222 trillion that America owes. And he talks about how this can't be sustained, and how one day sooner or later, that the Chinese and other nations will stop lending money.
Mainly China.
And that's what I was getting to. And that is why America is trying to hold the geopolitical barrel to China's head by using Taiwan as a whipping stick to keep China in line to continue to buy her debt and fund her escapades around the world. And this is why
send all them thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of ships over here with goods that they can never pay for.
Right. And also, go ahead. Say that. Go ahead.
One thing we should say, Social Security, most people think that their body, when you pay into it, is there for you when you get old. No, they take that money and give it to the old people. And then when, like the guy said, it's a Ponzi scheme. And then when you get old, the young people is gonna put in money for you, and that's how it keeps going on down. But he said that that's just for the liability for Social Security. He don't saying nothing about the military company. You can't spend $1 trillion every year on weapons and never pay for nothing.
Right. And also China being the largest, one of the two largest funders of America's debt. Japan is the other one, but Japan is in a very like tricky or precarious situation because Japan is occupied by the United States. So the United States is forcing Japan to buy debt. But look what it's doing. It's destroying the yen. It's destroying Japan's purchasing power. It's destroying its standard of living. And the people will soon, they're not going to be sitting here just taking it. After what, they're going to get up and they're going to do something about it. And they're going to push the occupiers off because they see where the military problems come from America disrespecting the people of Japan. It comes from the disregarding the national laws. It comes from a large amount of raping the women on those islands of Okinawa, and do you know America's military base in Okinawa takes up about 75 to 79% of the entire island, and the people want the bases removed. Now all of this has a play on American power being broken because you can only alienate people for so long. Like let us stay on Japan for just a second and let us use common sense. We see that Japan, whenever America needs to, she trots out Japan as this opposite pole of power to China to stoke tensions with China. All right. In reality, whenever I remember RT, I'll never forget this. It was taken off of YouTube when I started talking on it one time on another platform. There was a former Japanese prime minister being interviewed on RT.com. And they were asking him about the problems between the United States, China, and Japan. And the former Japanese prime minister, he said, we could have great relations with China. We're their neighbor, and I'm paraphrasing. We're their neighbor. They're our neighbor. We're Asians. We want the same thing for Asia, but America always intervenes. And that guy said, well, why don't you just tell America to go? And he says, and he revealed a secret that nobody talks about. He said that the American government bluntly told their government that if they made a strong pitch to unify with Asian nations like China and to disregard America, her interests or so-called interests, that America would not only keep the base in Okinawa, but they would seize the entire island of Okinawa from Japan. That's what he said. A former Japanese prime minister. I've been looking for that clip for years. I had it one time. One of my computers went down. I don't know which one of the computers it's on, but it was an interview. I distinctly remember this was an interview on Russia Today. It was Russia. I think it was Russia, America. Huh?
As you said before, they're occupied. America got thousands of troops in their country. Same thing with Germany. America got thousands of troops in there. They can't do anything without them telling them to do. And then they go up here and talk about Germany is with us, Japan is with us. They gotta be with you at the barrel of a gun.
Mm-hmm. But that can only last for so long. And see, Japan, to the detriment of the yen, Japan is holding 1.3, 1.2, 1.3 trillion US dollars.
They got
and
more actually than China.
Yes, they do. 1.2, 1.3 trillion dollars because America is forcing them to buy the debt. But they can only buy so much because now they are watering down their own currency, and the debt of their own government becomes greater because the purchasing power of their currency becomes smaller. So they are in a position now where sooner or later they're going to rebel against American dictates. And we see all of these things happening right now. We see everything pushing towards an inevitable war. Now, I want to also, while we're on this subject about the collapse of America, the fall of America, the fall of the Western world. All right. Um, I want to go. I want to pull up something. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I want to pull up something that Brother Rashid and I we have multiple interviews with former Marines colonel and Marines intelligence officer and founder of Scholars for 911 Truth and author James Fetzer, Jim Fetzer. And I want to play a clip because in this clip, he and I and Rashid, we talk about as the situation was brewing between Russia and America and some of the things that was going on. In this, I'm going to play two clips. One is 4 minutes and 12 seconds long, and one is 4 minutes and 39 seconds long. But I'll play them apart from each other as to add perspective to the clips. But I want you to listen to this. This clip right here is going along the lines of what we were talking about with the America, her gravy train, and how she has been funding her escapades on the graces of everybody else and through the barrel of a gun. Okay, I want you to pay close attention to this clip. It's about, so we don't need to put up this disclaimer because it's from this show. So just listen to this.
News to the show.
And there's a lot of other things that are going on, but also Vladimir Putin, the Iranian government, the Chinese government, and a host of the global South nations said that America is agreement incapable. That meaning that she's not, unincapable. Excuse me. It means that she's not capable of honoring her agreements or honoring anything that she signs. And
that's true.
If this and so being that it's true, how do you think that this looks on the global scene amongst nations that used to fear America and that nations that used to be allies with America or nations that are leaning toward China and Russia and the Eastern Bloc? How do you think they will perceive America's lies and treachery against allies and enemies alike?
There's going to be a realignment of nations, I'll tell you right now. Russia and China are being closer, and Iran as well. You got the BRICS nation that have an independent economic system. And Europe is going to become more neutral because they need relations with Russia. They don't need relations with the United States. If Russia is not a threat, they don't need NATO. They don't need the U.S. military to be stationed in Europe. That's all going to come to pass. Our forces are going to be rejected from the European nations now. And the fact that the word of the United States means nothing is going to diminish our role in international affairs. Having Biden in office is the worst possible development. And of course, it only happened by massive theft of the election of 2020. Donald Trump, for all his faults, had made us economically vigorous. He clamped down on the border. The lowest wage earners were seeing their wages rise at the highest rate. He made us energy independent. He called out the fake news media. Those were all major developments benefiting the American people. Biden has reversed every single one. And it's pathetic to witness the destruction of the United States under this Democrat administration. Disgusting.
Now, I'm going to put this out before everyone, and then I'll let Rashid ask the other Rashid ask a question because we're both Rashids. But
sure.
What do you think America, her standing will be as more nations challenge the dollar hegemony around the globe, especially now that Russia is demanding payments in rubles, and also before they demanded payment in rubles, they sent their team to China to coordinate this, and they signed on the SPS system, which is similar to the SWIFT system, signed on with the CIPS or chip system of China, where the mirror cards that would be issued would be backed by China's global union pay system, which is a rival to the SWIFT system. Since the U.S. dollar has allowed America to constantly run up debts and deficits constantly and export inflation around the world, now the world is seeing an alternative or another viable option. Where does this put America, especially with all of the debt that she continues to accumulate? And where does it put the dollar?
The free ride, the gravy train is over. The value of the dollar is going to collapse. We're going to see soaring inflation here in the US. We don't have any backing for our currency. It was Nixon who took us off the gold standard at the recommendation of Henry Kissinger, because since it was a reserve currency for international trade in oil, and oil is indispensable to every economy of every nation that functions using machinery of any kind, which requires gas and oil to operate. It's come to an end, Rashid. This is the end. This is the end for the American empire. It's all over. And Biden was instrumental in bringing it about.
Now, I have a belief that we will be suspended off YouTube for this show. Something tells me that because now I'm having problems in the background, we will be suspended. So we're not doing a live show. Please go to our other platform, like on Tuesday or Wednesday. Go check over on the Red Pill Journals. If we're not broadcasting over there, we will be doing a live. We'll try to set it up where we can do a free lives on locals and free lives on Patreon also at the patreon.com/the Red Pill Diaries. I have a sneaking suspicion that we are going to be suspended, but I want to also say to the YouTube algorithm, we are apolitical. We do not ascribe to the mantra of election tampering. We do not ascribe to that. But what we do is allow people to have their own opinion. And we did not know that clip was in there where he spoke on that. And if you give us a chance to, before when the show is over, I'll have my son to go in and he'll cut out that clip. Don't suspend the channel, because that's what you would use to suspend our channel. We had no idea that was in that clip. So let me say that again. All we're trying to talk about is the geopolitical climate, the economics and stuff like that. And I have to say that because every time somebody speaks freely, before you know it, within hours to a day or so, we're spending, or we get a strike against us and we can't post for a week, and then we get this and this. So I have to say that, and for the onlookers, it may seem tedious and it may seem monotonous, but in the truth is, this happens constantly. So I have to say that we are apolitical. Go ahead.
Wait a minute. Ain't America supposed to be freedom of speech?
It's supposed to be, but I guess the freedom of speech don't apply to us. There was a ruling, and let me speak on that. There was a ruling in Texas, I believe a week ago, about these platforms here, and how the district judge, I forget which, the U.S. district judge, I forget which district he was in. He ruled that platforms that have over 50,000 subscribers or users cannot ban you or give you strikes for having a different opinion than the mainstream. That was just ruled. But my point is this: when we have guests on the show, we don't know what they are going to say, because they are free thinkers, just like we are. And we should not be held accountable for someone else's thoughts or somebody else's thinking. All right. Now, and on Patreon, you and I are going to do a Patreon this week behind closed doors that will not involve YouTube, that we're going to touch on these issues about elections, politics, and sickness. I won't say what the sickness is, but that sickness that they propaganda the people into staying in their homes about. We're going to talk about a lot of that, but we won't bring it to the platform of YouTube. And we hope that the algorithm and the censors see that we had no idea that was his freedom of speech. Please don't hold us accountable for it. Every time our audience grow, we get suspended, and the growth is stunted. And then you already take a lot of our viewers from us anyhow. So it is what it is. So on the next subject, I know you wanted to talk on something. I want to play another clip, but I'm scared he might say something else in that might get us banned for real. So so go ahead and say what you have to say on another subject, man.
Oh, I was talking about I forgot my train of thought. Just go to flow. That algorithm stuff just throws you for a loop. That
Yeah, it does.
they can ban you for what somebody else says.
Yeah.
And like this Julian Assange guy, he got banned for telling the truth. He in prison for telling the truth. They ain't. Have you ever heard any of them come out and say what he said was wrong? That he said it. That's what's the problem.
So let me tell you. So all this geopolitics that is going on, the economic side of it, and America threatening Russia with severe consequences, and Russia is just brushing it off because they already said what they said. And how can you? First of all, we had what is his name? Larry Johnson on the show, former CIA agent and CIA analyst a few days ago. You can go check it on our page. We just had him on, and we're gonna have a Patreon with him coming up in a week or so. Okay, but he said in other ones they said that Russia's air defense systems are second to none, and maybe one or two nuclear missiles will get through, but all of Russia's nuclear missiles will get through to the NATO nations and stuff like this. So and on top of that, Russia has working hypersonic missiles. I mean, working where you don't have but 3 seconds of warning before it hits you, 3 to 5 seconds. So you have 4 to 5 different versions of hypersonic missiles. You have a new missile out that carries 10 warheads. It has a range of almost 13,000 kilometers, could strike anywhere on Earth, and it has a hyperglide with it, and each individually targeted warhead can destroy an area the size of Texas. And you want to threaten a person, man? If you don't stop this foolishness, that's just insanity to try to keep the bluff going. Go ahead, talk.
They said that Russia had a nuclear weapon that can hit on the East Coast, and I think it had 10 warheads. Just 3 of the warheads can wipe out everybody on the eastern seaboard.
Yeah. And this is what I'm saying.
But yet and still, we're gonna, if you don't do what we say, we're going to nuke you. Well, they can nuke you also. It's insanity. The act of a madman to pull out nuclear weapons when you can get nuked yourself.
Yeah.
It don't make any sense.
And that's what, listen, insane, irrational people have insane, irrational policies in an irrational, insane political system, and they rarely make any sense. When you are detached from reality, up is down, down is up, you in bizarro world. That's what the politicians are.
Once you kill off this planet, where you gonna live at?
Hey, like they said the other day.
You can't go to Mars. You can't go to Venus.
They said in the Science Journal the other day, we think we found 50 super Earths that's habitable for us. I was like, oh my God, these people tell so many lies.
Just outright lying.
And even if there were 50, just think about it. Even if it were 50 a planet, do you think the people of those planets would invite you to their planet or allow you on their planet when they just saw what you did to your own planet? I'm common sense.
And once you found it, how you gonna get there? It's like some guy, he was selling plots on Mars. right?
Yeah, I remember that.
And then this got the big old picture behind. Now this is your plot right here, and send money, and once you get this certificate, it's legal to it'll be yours legally that you own that part of Mars. Now, how you get there, that's your business. But once you get there, it's yours. Here we go again, selling land that's not his.
Yeah.
Even America, we repeat, he stole that.
Mm-hmm.
He stole Australia. Australia. He stole Canada. He stole Mexico, or really Mexico. All of it was Indian land. So how in the hell did the Europeans be able to come over here and start telling somebody that this is my land? That's the way he is. What do the Christian scriptures tell you? Woe to he who builds his house on a bloody foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go and steal people's land and kill them off, then that's a bloody foundation.
And
then run around
in iniquity.
Yeah. And then sit around talking about how holy you are. The other people are uncivilized. And a murderer is civilized. It's almost what with Jesus and what's his name, Barabbas. They said away with Jesus and accepted a murderer. Who's murderer?
And so with that, I want to I want to go into something else. So we're talking about the economic position of America. We're talking about her policies. We're talking about the policies of the West also. So most of you, if you follow the blog and you follow the show and you follow our other little sites, you know that Carl Icahn, billionaire Carl Icahn, comes up, and his article was really called "The Worst Is Yet to Come," but on some sites they don't call it that. The article was called "The Worst Is Still Yet to Come." That was Carl Icahn's article. But on here, on Russia Today, they termed it "Worst Bond Market Crash in Over 70 Years Coming." That's from Bloomberg. And in this, let me read it to you. And remember what we played for you about the nations would stop buying the debt, like China, and the nations would start positioning themselves outside of the dollar. You see that with the Eurasian Economic Union. You just saw that with the Shanghai Cooperation meeting. You see that with the BRICS. You see that with the Iranian nation now setting up their system to be interactive with the chip system of China, the Union Pay, and the Russian Mir system. You see all of these nations moving outside of the dollar. But listen what Carl Icahn has to say. And he says, this is from Russia Today. This is on Russia Today. The central bank's aggressive interest rate hikes could cause a heavy sell-off, strategists reportedly warned. Global government bonds are on course for their worst performance since 1949. Isn't that amazing? That wasn't it right after the establishment of the Second World War order, right? Isn't that right?
Setting up let's go. The brick, what do you call it? The Bretton Woods system.
Yeah, right after the establishment of the establishment of the post World War order, the post World War II order. That's what it. And it says, global government bonds are on a course for their worst performance since 1949 as losses mount in the face of aggressive central banks, Bloomberg reported over the weekend, citing Bank of America projections. According to the report, the escalating losses reflect how far the U.S. Federal Reserve and other central banks have shifted away from the monetary policies of the COVID pandemic when they had rates near zero to keep their economies going. The reversal has hit everything from stock prices to oil as investors brace for an economic slowdown. On Friday, the UK's 5-year bonds plummeted by the most since 1992 after the government rolled out a massive tax cut plan. 2-year US Treasuries are in the middle of the longest losing streak since at least 1976, falling for 12 straight days. 1976 was like 5 years after the world went off the gold and silver standard. Now let's go a little further. Bottom line, All those years of central bank interest rate suppression, poof, gone. Peter Bookvar says, chief investment officer at Bleakley Advisory Group, told the media. These bonds are trading like emerging market bonds, and the biggest financial bubble in the history of bubbles, that of sovereign bonds, continues to deflate, he explained. The Fed raised its policy rate range to 3.25% on Wednesday, which is the third straight 75 basis points. Let me see. This thing is scrolling up fast. Basis point hike, hinting further increase beyond 4.5%. With more Fed rate hiking coming and quantitative tightening, as well as the possibly more government debt issuance down the road amid less treasury buyers. Stop right there. Amid less treasury buyers out there now. Stop right there. Do you remember what that professor said? When people turn away from the US dollar and the debt, what would happen? Interest rates would spike, right? The debt would balloon, and we'll be looking at a crash. The guys explained. The guy that I played said this in, I believe, in 2006 or 2008. We're in 2022, at the butt end of 2022. And so he says, with more Fed rate hiking coming and quantitative tightening, as well as the possibly more government debt issuance down the road amid less treasury buyers out there now, it all just means higher rates. Managing director at Mishler Financial, Glenn Capello, said, adding the 10-year bond yield is definitely going to get closer to 4%. Now, I'm going to stop right there for a minute. I am going to stop right there because I want to say something to you. America has been able to service her debt because her interest rates were artificially laid low for so long. As the interest rates rises, so too does the interest rate on the debt rises. And that means that soon America would have to pay over $1 trillion per cycle to just service. I'm not talking about to pay off the debt or to pay down the debt. I'm talking about to service the debt. You know how if you have a credit card and your bottom line is $50 that you have to pay on your credit card, but you spent your credit card, you have a $30,000 credit card limit, and you spent $29,800. All right. Now, but your minimum payment is 50. Paying 50 every month does not pay down the other 28,850 bucks that you spent. That only keeps you from going nosediving to the deep. But sooner or later, it catches up with you. Either you have to pay more on the debt, or you have to just give up and go into bankruptcy.
Once again, all he have to do is go to his computer and say, hit $1 trillion and push it in. What people fail to realize is this money is nothing.
That's right.
That's all it is. He don't have tangible, even his tangible money. He pushes it on a computer and hits it in, and that's what it is. It's worth nothing. And what we're trying to tell you, when the other people around the world wise up to his 3-card Molly scheme, it's over. He got China and Russia got more. They've been hoarding gold, natural resources and stuff. Is something of value. That's what your money's supposed to be backed with. But if your money is backed by nothing, then it's worth nothing. It's a global Ponzi scheme, like me and Brother Rashid had been saying before. It is the coldest scheme on the planet. You got to give it to these guys. These guys are ruthless with their plots and schemes. I'm going to go over to a country in Africa and tell them that I'm going to give them a piece of paper with my face printed on it. It's worth 500 billion barrels of oil. And you give me the oil, I'll give you the paper. right? You go and take this oil, refine it, and make all different kind of plastic, all kind of materials out of it, then sell it back to me, and I'm gonna pay you with some of the dollars you gave me.
Yeah.
You gotta give it to this guy.
Or if I say something that's contrary to your policy, and I'm holding that paper money that you gave me for my resources, then what I do is sanction you and nullify the value of the so-called perceived value of it, and I just print that same amount of money I gave and give it to somebody else because it's still in my eyes worth something, but I'm robbing you of the ability to use it to redeem it with me. That's a
It
man. That is a
reminds
cold scheme, buddy. That's a cold
it
scheme.
reminds me of a cartoon, one of the funnies that was in Muhammad Speaks newspaper. They had this Arab sheik that had all of these dollar bills in his cloth, and they kept disappearing on him. Poof, poof, poof. And when he really wound up, it all had disappeared. It was all an illusion. Just like the American dollar system, it's nothing but an illusion. It's worth nothing. When Nixon took him off the gold standard, from that point on, his $300 quadrillion, zillion dollars, anything you can say, all he had to do is just put it on the paper and push a computer and push it in. Okay, it don't make no difference. I'm $50 trillion in debt. Okay, I'll put it on punch it in my computer and give you $60 trillion. It means nothing. But it's all right as long as other people go along with it. But there's a day coming soon when they're gonna stop. Right. And then it's gonna show you just how rich he is. He's the emperor with no clothes. And you know what happened with that favor.
And you know, as you're talking, I'm scrolling down. I'm seeing how other nations like Nepal and smaller nations are offering Russia to trade with their national currencies. Like, and then I'm looking at
India and all, and everybody want to get into the rupee. The dollar is becoming old. What we were taught, it's gonna come a day when you want it. The dollar bill is gonna be worth nothing. You'll be able to take a whole wheelbarrow full of it and take it down the street and won't be able to buy a loaf of bread. You're gonna be so disgusted at what it once purchased that you're gonna be so disgusted you ain't gonna even want to set it on fire to keep you warm.
Yeah.
We see that coming.
And I'm scrolling down how they're talking about the European Union now teeters on economic collapse. They hate to use the word depression, so they continue to use the word recession. And they're talking about
and then it's not even a depression. It's a collapse.
Right.
Total 100% collapse is coming.
Thousands of Italian firms on the brink of closure. Thousands of firms across Europe is on the brink of closure. The United States, rich in natural gas, is now saying that, remember the promises that she made that she would ship liquefied gas to Europe if Europe closed down those pipelines from Russia, right? Now there's an article out saying that the United States is experiencing shortages in natural gas and more businesses stand on the brink. And here's one for the kicker. Firewood has skyrocketed. The prices have skyrocketed across Europe because of their policies.
And like we said, don't look like Putin is the one that's going to be have to run and hide.
Yeah.
You got all of your people, and if it's extremely cold weather, the leadership of Europe is the one that's going to have to run and hide. That, like that article you put.
I think, and it's almost difficult to believe in a sense, but the delusional level at which American foreign policy operates, and the real crux of this conflict is NATO expansion, of course, the eastward expansion of NATO. Back when James Baker was Secretary of State, he promised to Gorbachev NATO would not expand 1 inch eastward. I think at that time there were 17 countries in NATO. Today there are 30. Because they promptly broke that promise, and in 91, in 2004, 2007, they kept expanding. Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, etc. And then, the real sort of the red line was Ukraine and Georgia. And even commentators and political analysts on the right and conservatives like Robert Gates, former Secretary of Defense, in his memoirs in 2014, at the very end of the book, he says, Ukraine and Georgia, the idea of them as candidates for NATO inclusion was reckless overreach. Even people like Henry Kissinger, George Kennan, when these are people that are warning it's a bad idea, I mean, you wonder what's going on in the heads of people at the Biden administration. But the U.S. desperately needs a long, protracted war. It's an economic imperative, in a sense. I mean, the U.S. has to have a villain. They have to sell armaments. They have to create conflicts. And when Putin took power in 2000, remember, he actively wanted to join NATO. And everybody in the European Union saw that as, quite possibly a good idea, until the United States told them, no, that's a terrible idea, because the U.S. had long-term plans.
So what we're seeing is a world unhinged. And the ramifications, this is the blowback of a world unhinged. When you have unsound leaders with unsound policies, and they have been smitten with derision and visions of grandeur, they are willing to push the world towards the brink. They have a mindset that if I can't win, if I can't rule, I'm not letting nobody rule. I'm going to have a scorched earth policy. I'm going to bomb as much as I can bomb. I'm going to fight as much as I can fight. I'm going to kill as much as I can kill. I can pillage as much as I can pillage before it all comes down. And if you don't think that's America's policy, think about how many wars that she's engaged in since her founding. How many? They said she's in her founding, she's only not been at war for 4 years or something like that.
9 years.
9 years since America was founded. She has only had 9 years of a reprieve from war. That shows that she is the war maker. Now, look at her pillaging Syria oil and gas. Look at her pillaging Iraq's oil and gas. Look at her pillaging the oil and gas from Libya. Right? That shows you that if I can't rule, I'm going to take everything. And if the house falls down, I'm going to party like it's 1999. That's what's going on.
That clip you just showed with for NATO, it showed that Gorbachev was an absolute fool. You gonna sell out your country for a promise from somebody else. The American Indian could tell him about the white man of America's promises. Promise you the world and give you nothing. Hundreds and hundreds of treaties, broke every last one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're looking at a total collapse of American power. We're looking at a total collapse of American domination. We are looking at a time, and that is one reason why we continue to tell you that in the midst of all of this, America is collapsing, and she is raging at everyone. She's raging at everyone because she has been accustomed to ruling as she wants to rule, doing as she wants to do, being able to, as I say, as I do, unless I tell you to. And so we're watching the complete collapse, not just of the Republic of America, not just the collapse of Europe or the Western world. We're watching a total implosion and downward spiral of an entire global order. And most people, they can't fathom that. They cannot think that these people who have held dominance and power and wealth and riches and influence for so long could lose their position. They can't fathom that. But there is a new order that's underway. Now, I want to say this before Rashid chimes in. On our screen, my son did this for us. On our screen, these are some of the platforms that we're on. I think one of them is Have Done, but you go to Rumble and then you look up the Red Pill Diaries. I think Rumble.com and Red Pill Diaries. You go there. Locals, you can go to the address up there on Locals, but you can also go to Locals and join the Locals platform. We're trying to learn that platform, so give us some time. We put up articles and videos up there too, but we're trying to learn it, and so that we can learn how to invite people over. So go to locals.com, or you can go to the main page of, it's called empowermentoftruth.locals.com. Empowermentoftruth.locals.com, and you can access the articles there, and then you can go over to the Appeal Diaries page too, and you can start your page on there, where you, if you have something to say there, it's free. Go over there and join us. Also, join us on Patreon. Join us on Odyssey, which is a platform just like YouTube, Odyssey. And our videos from here usually go over to Odyssey in a day or so. They're automatically switched over there. Also, go join our Twitch page and go to our what is the name of these platforms? I cannot think of all of them. But if you don't see a live video from us in the next day or two, you know that we have been suspended. That's what it is. And so go to one of these, show your support, and then just say something. Say, hey, we realize that you were suspended. Hey, we support you, or whatever like that. Just write something to let us know that, because that goes a long way with our spirit and goes a long way with helping us know that we've reached people. Just go over there, put a word in or something like that. You can read some of the articles, some free articles are on Patreon, some free videos are on Patreon. But if you want the breaking news stuff, the real in-depth stuff, I think it's like to join the Patreon, you get stuff like $5 or $7 or something like that. I think it is. But we, what was it, a month before, we had 34 articles, and we had roughly like 8 videos or something like that. So I think it was worth that. And Rashid, you know for yourself, I was telling you about, and I did an article about Russia striking NATO bases, and it came up the next morning, but not as in depth. It came up the next morning on other platforms when we had already talked about it on Patreon. So you will get it before it breaks on the other news platforms, and you'll get more in depth because we have sources around the globe that continue to give us information. And the only reason we charge a few dollars on the Patreon, which you can go over there and become a free member, is because the financial support is needed to keep going. Okay, so on that note, we're going to continue on for the next few minutes, and then we know we've tried your patience, but I know Rashid want to say a few things, and maybe we'll play another video or read another portion of an article and elaborate on it, and then we'll close out. Go ahead, Rashid.
What about
you there? Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, we were saying about the other day about Pakistan. What's happening in Pakistan?
Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't the information that I told you about Pakistan. I have yet to hear any more about that. And unlike other people, I don't make up stuff. I'm not. If I don't know, I'm going to tell you. I don't know. If I haven't heard anything on it, I'm not going to just to make myself sound intelligent or informed. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to lie to the people. I refuse to do that. I have yet to hear from my other source. When I hear back from it, before it goes in on Patreon, I'll tell you.
I was reading a couple
and
of
we'll
articles.
Discuss it.
I was reading a couple of articles, and he was saying that they were trying to get him to make a deal with the government to tone down the all of the rallies and stuff that he was having, and they wanted to make a deal with him to when they bring in this new general that the president said the opposition have a voice in picking this new general. But we see everything is coming down from Iran to Russia, China, all around the global South. Like you said, is a new horizon is coming, and they see that the Western world is going down, and everybody is ready to as we would talk. An old dog was dying. It was dying all along, but when it finally died, the fleas had to jump off that dog.
Yeah.
And that's the empire.
Yeah.
Everybody have to
Yeah.
jump off the empire. And you see it with your go to supermarkets, you see stores and stuff. This global supply chain is being hit, and don't let yourself get sharp. No.
Let me interrupt you. Now the EU, from what I'm finding out, you remember all of this brouhaha over oil caps. We're gonna cap the prices of oil, Russian oil. Now they backtrack and say the EU plans to set aside Russian oil cap plan. You know why? Because they're desperate because winter is approaching. And on top, listen to this. Let me read this article for you. And I'm just seeing this article for the first time. This article here. It says EU central banks warn outlook is darkening. Okay. See, they see something that's going on that's out of their control. They have been able to dominate the world so long and manipulate policy, manipulate finance, manipulate currency, manipulate protests, everything. And all of that, the Bible gives you a saying that as thou hast done, so shall it be done to thee. What in essence is saying that you are not the exception to the rules of the laws of cause and effect. Okay, so it says this: the ECB, which is the European Central Bank, slash growth rates forecast, hiking interest rates even as it predicts inflation will climb further. Listen, this is going a little bit too fast for me. Let me scroll back down a little bit. Europe is facing lower than expected economic growth as inflation continues to climb. European Central Chief Christine Lagarde revealed on Monday, explaining that the ECB has raised interest rates by 75 basis points in an attempt to control soaring prices. Now, it says, speaking before the European Parliament's Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs on Monday, Lagarde admitted that inflation remains far too high and is likely to stay above our target for an extended period. Doesn't that sound like the Fed? Doesn't that sound like the Fed's announcement the other day? Okay, let's go a little further. It says the ECB chief has warned that the economic consequences for the euro era of Russia's unjustified, they had to throw that in, unjustified war of aggression on Ukraine had spiraled further since June. A reference to Western sanctions on Russian oil and gas, which have sent fuel prices skyrocketing. And her words are, the outlook is darkening, and it's quotation marks around it, and it is bold. So they're putting emphasis on something. They are now seeing their policies are coming back to bite them in the behind, and they don't know what to do. Now, before you comment, because I want you to remember what I just said right there, Rashid, I want you to make your comments on it. But also, these so-called beacons of democracy, America and the European Union, why is it that no one ever says that the EU government is not elected democratically? These people who are over the EU, who are trying to tell Africa about democracy and South America about democracy and East Asia about democracy, these people were put in the positions. They were not elected into these positions. So go ahead, Rashid, comment on both the darkening outlook of the European Union and the Western world, and comment on this so-called lecturing of democracy by fascist elements in power.
Have they ever thought of, why don't I stop causing all of this trouble? That could be the out from all of my troubles. But he can't think like that. Stop committing wars. Stop robbing. Stop stealing. Stop cheating. Stop committing murder. Oh, I can't do that. because I, as I said before, I am the king. And what I say go. All I know is how to be the king. And that's what you have in the Western world. That's all he knows is how to rule, tell other people what to do. And if you don't do what I say, I'll kill you.
Mm-hmm. I tell you, it is and it brings to mind what she's talking about, the darkening situation, and we're going to close out shortly. But it brings to mind the clip that we played on one of our previous shows from Jamie Dimon of Goldman Sachs. You know, the global economic financial terrorist Jamie Dimon, and how he made a warning to his colleagues. Yeah, yeah. He made a comment to his colleagues about what he sees coming. Remember what Largett says. She says the ECB chief warned that the economic consequences for the euro area of Russia unjustified war of aggression on Ukraine had spiraled further since June. A reference to Western sanctions on Russian oil and gas, which have sent fuel prices skyrocketing. The outlook is darkening. Now, let me play Jamie about what he sees about America and the global outlook.
It's a hurricane. Right now it's kind of sunny. Things are doing fine. You know, everyone thinks the Fed can handle this. That hurricane is right out there down the road coming our way. We just don't know if it's a minor one or Superstorm Sandy or Sandy or Andrew or something like that. And it's you better brace yourself.
Michael Fratcher was quoted.
You see how they're messing with the show now? Let me play that clip again. That was a 24-second clip that went by in 3 seconds. They're tripping right now.
It's a hurricane. Right now it's kind of sunny. Things are doing fine. You know, everyone thinks the Fed can handle this. That hurricane is right out there down the road coming our way. We just don't know if it's a minor one or Superstorm Sandy or Sandy or Andrew or something like that. And it's you better brace yourself.
So he warned his colleagues to brace themselves to that economic storm that is on its way. And that's why Lagarde is now saying the outlook is darkening. That's why Carl Icahn comes out and tells, he has an article, the worst is to come. I wonder where he gets that from. Economically, he's talking about the worst is yet to come. So what we're watching
I remember
is a
somebody else.
implosion.
I remember somebody else put out an article, the worst is yet to come.
I was referring to that somebody. But everybody, listen. We really enjoyed ourselves with you today. We really enjoyed talking to you. We hope that they don't ban us or suspend us, give us a strike or whatever. But we constantly get it. And so, if so, up above on the screens right here, let me see. Right there, you see other platforms to check us out on. Go join them. Go, free to join and all this stuff, and give us some support and some feedback. All of that stuff. Maybe you can help us grow and spread word of mouth. We really appreciate your time. We love it. In closing, Rashid, is there anything that you want to say in closing?
We didn't said it all. Like we just said, the worst is yet to come. What's getting ready to take place is going to move the entire globe.
Well, we're going to leave it right there. There's no better way to go out like this, except we say that the same way we came in, it's the same way we go out, in the name of the true and living God. And on that note, I love you, Mama. Peace.